Lake Effect brings you conversations about what's happening in Milwaukee and the people, places, and organizations that shape the community. This is Lake Effect Spotlight from WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.
In 2021, Bubbler Talk investigated a bridge near the Milwaukee River that seems to go nowhere. But there's another bridge in Milwaukee that also seems to go nowhere that a WUWM listener wanted to know about. Here's WUWM's Mayan Silver with an extended Bubbler Talk that kicks off the new season.
Bubbler Talk, quenching Milwaukee's thirst for knowledge.
I'm WUWM's Mayan Silver. I'm standing at the shore of Lake Michigan, near the McKinley Marina in Milwaukee. In front of me is a 106-foot-long white bridge.
Yeah, I called it the bridge to nowhere because it just kind of seems to go, over a little piece of water that you could easily just walk around. So I didn't really know if it had a purpose or why it was there.
Eileen McEnroe-Hankis is a structural engineer in Milwaukee. She says there doesn't appear to be a functional reason for the bridge.
It just seemed a little odd, like why bother going up and over when you can just walk around it?
So she wrote into Bubbler Talk looking for answers. And we found out there's a lot more than meets the eye.
Buju zigwanodinans indigenous migizian dodem odawa zayaganing ojiboy onishinabe kwe indao. Menomini zayaganing indojaba. Nice to meet you.
Siobhan Marks is Communications and Marketing Director for the Indian Community School. She's Eagle Clan and a lineal descendant of the La Corte Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. Here's the short answer about the bridge.
This bridge was a part of the original Coast Guard station. This is what remains.
From 1916 to 1969, the federal government operated a Coast Guard station here in McKinley Park. In late 1969, the Coast Guard moved to Bayview, abandoning the McKinley Park building. That's when Milwaukee's chapter of the American Indian Movement, or AIM, stepped in. It's a grassroots movement that advocates for Native self-determination. It was a time of profound social change. People like Herb Paulus were rising up against inequities. Paulus was Oneida and a Milwaukee AIM leader. On August 14, 1971, AIM tore the plywood barricades off the abandoned Coast Guard station at McKinley Park and started occupying it.
We want to highlight the drastic need of our people.
That's Paulus in an interview with TMJ4 News at the time.
There are funding agencies, government, state, etc., that have monies to help and are helping other people. But they've neglected us, the first Americans.
In a 2021 interview with WUWM commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Coast Guard station occupation, Paulus's wife, Dorothy Ninham, explained what AIM was working towards.
You have to remember that a lot of our people were removed from reservations and put into the urban settings and promised housing and employment and education, and a lot of that never happened. Some of these people ended up in worse conditions than they were on the reservations, living in poverty, and some of them being homeless and with, like jobs that couldn't support a family. So it was really a tough time. It was tough for us, but we had to stand our ground.
Paulus has since passed away. But as he and AIM occupied the Coast Guard building, they used the Treaty of Laramie to negotiate with the Nixon administration. Like other treaties, it says that federal government lands are held in trust and that if the government abandons a space, it should go back to its original caretakers. Siobhan Marks says AIM was ready to defend its right to use the property.
There was even preparations for an armed standoff if necessary.
She says, according to Paulus, the government even considered sending in the Marines to take control of the building.
Fortunately, none of that happened. We were able to negotiate an agreement that would allow AIM to remain on the property and for the Indian Community School to bring their children and teachings here.
The Coast Guard station became the Indian Community School's third home. It had previously been in a founding mother's home, then moved to a church basement. The school was located in the Coast Guard building until 1980, along with a culturally based alcohol treatment initiative. Then, After negotiations with the city and county, it moved to the Bartlett Avenue School building, then the Concordia College property near State Street. Marks says that both these places, including the Concordia campus, were in disrepair.
And it wasn't an easy place to be able to educate children. Their lunch was in another building from where they were being schooled. So if it was winter, they had to put on their boots, hats, coats, mittens, and be transported over there so they could eat lunch. And then they had to put their boots and hats and mittens and gloves on and go back to where they were being schooled.
Also, the school relied on federal grant funding, which was sometimes unreliable. It closed for a few years in 1983. That's around the same time that the Forest County Potawatomi, a small, impoverished tribe in northern Wisconsin, started bingo operations. Then the school came up with an idea.
In the mid-1980s, the Indian Community School was looking for a tribal partner to take land into trust, and it is my understanding that they approached every tribe in the state of Wisconsin, and the only tribe that said that they would be interested was the Forest County Potawatomi.
That's Jeff Crawford, a member of the Forest County Potawatomi and the tribe's attorney general. He explains the tribe's interest.
Although the reservation is located in northern Wisconsin, our historic treaty and occupation area is from Chicago all the way up to Door County. And so, in other words, all of Milwaukee, Kenosha, Racine, this entire southeastern Wisconsin was Potawatomi Treaty territory. For that reason, we were most interested in getting lands back in the Milwaukee area. And so that was a successful application in part because we had those historical connections to this very campus.
Part of the land the school acquired is a 7.5-acre property on Canal Street in the Menominee Valley. After a few years of negotiating with the city and county, the Forest County Potawatomi began operating a bingo hall there in 1991. It's now the Potawatomi Casino and Hotel, the first off-reservation casino in the country. And it's led to financial stability for both the Potawatomi and the Indian Community School.
From that point forward, there was a steady stream of revenue for the Potawatomi and for the Indian Community School. And so that was the beginnings of the relationship to how we got here today.
ICS was able to purchase the 178 acres on which the school is currently located. Here's Siobhan Marks.
And we are what we consider our forever home out in Franklin.
On a late spring day, students sit eating lunch inside the Indian Community School. It's a magnificent building that connects the outside natural world with the inside. Rain drips outside today, connecting Mother Nature with the natural materials the school is made of, including copper, wood, marble, and ancient stone. Many rooms have floor-to-ceiling windows, which capture views of the surrounding lush green gardens and pathways. There's intention in the way everything is built. About 360 kids attend school here. They learn a traditional K-4 through 8th grade curriculum. But the school is also bringing forward native languages, culture, and ways so the children learn about who they are and where they came from. So it turns out that the Bridge to Nowhere on Milwaukee's lakefront is a piece of the story that led to the present-day Indian Community School, which serves urban Milwaukee's American Indian population. You wouldn't know the deep history of this place where the bridge stands simply by looking at it. But why did they keep the bridge here? After the American Indian movement left the McKinley Park Coast Guard Station in 1980, historian John Gerda says the building sat empty. The property suffered a serious fire in 1988, but Gerda says preservationists still look to it as a rare example of a prairie-style public building. And there were some ideas to make use of the space for a different purpose.
I think there were proposals for the Great Lakes Museum in there, and the location's pretty ideal, just the lake is right there. And there was, until the Potawatomi began to work on the cultural center over on the Concordia campus, there were plans for an Indian cultural center and plans for a restaurant as well. And I think some of those moved forward conceptually, but financing was difficult and rehab was difficult. So none became realities, obviously.
The county finally tore down the former Coast Guard station in 2008, but the bridge remains. There's no plaque or historical marker at this place commemorating the American Indian movement in Milwaukee. Here's Siobhan Marks again.
And I think it's important to note that this is the largest concentration of Native Americans in the entire state of Wisconsin, actually reside right here in Milwaukee, and we have a rich, vibrant Native community and have had for many years. That said, we are less than 2% of the overall population. So it is difficult to be seen, difficult to be remembered, unless someone actually takes that time to document that this is the original caretakers, this role in this part of history.
Mark says Milwaukee didn't start with its city charter and the electing of its first city council. Milwaukee began 40 or 50,000 years before that, with the original caretakers of the land. In a way, this bridge is a connector to that past and the future generations that honor it.
What have you always wanted to know about the Milwaukee area? Visit wuwm.com/bubblertalk to submit your question.
You can find more interviews like this one by visiting wuwm.com/Lake Effect. And while you're there, subscribe to the Lake Effect Spotlight podcast.